Thank you, Sonia.
I welcome you to join.
Go ahead, please welcome Cheryl.
Thank you, Linda. I welcome you to join me in this prayer by opening your heart and closing your eyes. I am so grateful for the divine and infinite possibilities within each of us. As such, I breathe in deeply the lessons and the teachings and the energies of divine will, which carry our choices, commitments, and willingness, all to be used brilliantly in our lives. We are each given the gift of making choices that will support us in our expansiveness through this magnificent lifetime. Our will also ensures that we can maintain the commitments necessary to ensure our health, happiness, and stability in our general life and in our relationships. Our willingness to bring about positive, loving change is essential in managing the lengthy journey we are here to explore and master for our sakes and those that we love. We can release all doubt and any negative attachments as we fill with grace and welcoming the strengthening of our divine will today. We can know that anything that needs to be brought back into balance and control in our lives today is possible and will happen now. We are grateful for this natural order of divine will and flow coming through each of us for our greatest good now, allowing the strengthening and a determined way of being to be firmly in place in alignment with our magnificent minds and hearts. May we continue to be supported and carried in this way. May we call upon our divine will in any moment and feel secure again to make the necessary choices vital to our greatest life. I am so grateful for this blessing and know that there will be continued gifts arising out of this wonderful will for all of us. With love, and so it is. Amen.
Thank you, Cheryl. Before I introduce our guest speaker this morning, I want to remind you that to optimize your experience, to select speaker view on your Zoom options. So let us begin. You know, it gives me great pleasure to welcome for the first time Reverend Ogun Holder, who will explore how the power of will can not only bring us to an inner peace that passes understanding, but that we can now live from that peace to create a world of wonder around us. So let me share a little bit about Reverend Ogun Holder. Reverend Ogun is an ordained unity minister. He's co-founder with Reverend Kelly Isla of Project Santis, a safe, brave online space to discover and be our holiest self, thus co-creating a world of equanimity, justice, and love for all. He has authored several books, contributed to a number of Unity publications, served as a spiritual coach, a music and choir director in multiple spiritual centers, and is a podcaster, blogger, and parent. And as I read his various bios and checked out the website, I was struck by the reoccurring theme of living life through the heart of love. So please sit back, relax, and open your hearts and minds to receive Reverend Ogun's message, followed by the meditation, and then directly into special music. Reverend Ogun.
Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity to share with you. I'm thrilled to be here. And I look forward to the next time I can actually do this standing in front of you. Like I love how Zoom has enabled us and technology has enabled us to connect at times when we might not be able to do it in person and connect with people around the world. And at the same time, nothing beats standing in front of you. But you know, I don't live my life by the either or rules. I live my life by the both and. So we'll do a little bit of both and at some point. I love that you started your service by acknowledging the indigenous people that once lived and primarily occupied the land on which you're on. I do this and Reverend Kelly and I do this in most of the workshops that we, classes that we do, to really increase people's awareness and tie them to the ancestors and tie them to their own ancestors, and realize that indigenous peoples today are they in no matter what country you're in. And I come from Barbados, which was also once a British colony, but the idea is that colonialization has wreaked havoc on so many parts of the world, and many peoples have been brought to the brink of extinction as a result of it. And to really open our hearts and minds and to honor that as well. I am currently in Germantown, Maryland, which is a suburb of Washington, D.C., and it was the original home of the Piscataway and the Manahoac indigenous tribes. I am originally from Barbados, and because I am a person of color, my ancestry stretches back to my homeland of Africa. I am descended from the Yoruba people, which lived in the area we now know as Nigeria and Benin. By fun happenstance, my name Ogun is actually the name of a Yoruba god, a Yoruba deity, the god of iron. My parents didn't know of our actual biological ancestry when they named me. They found the name in the book and loved the name and gave it to me. And while I enjoyed that, I was like, oh, great, you named me after a god. That's nothing to live up to at all. No pressure. Wow. But wait for it. But thanks to unity, I do realize the truth that, hey, all that God is, I am. So I don't actually have to live up to being a deity. I just have to live out my divinity. So I'm glad for the name that sort of in and of itself in a weird way reminds me of that each and every day. Unity's teachings are I don't have to tell you, they're transformative, they're powerful, and perhaps the teaching in unity that I'm most grateful for, that most helped me wrap my head around what this all is the 12 powers. So when maybe you grow up in a tradition where that is not unity. I don't know how many people on this call originally, or their first spiritual religious experience as a child was unity. I would ask to show your hands. Man, you've got your camera off, so you don't have to show your hands. But usually in a spiritual community or in a class with unity people, I ask how many people were born and grew up in unity. Generally, I might get one or two hands. We still call those people in unity unicorns, right? They're so rare. It's so magical, right? And I'm very envious of them. But most of us didn't grow up in that tradition. We received a very different message about God and spirituality and religion, right? So even though we move on and evolve past those teachings, you come into unity and you read something that like Eric Butterworth wrote, where he says, and I'm paraphrasing, basically all that God is, the fullness of God is present at every point in the universe, including the point of me and the point of you. So when I first heard that, right, that kind of blew my mind a little bit and made me very anxious and very scared. Wait, you're saying I am all that God is? What am I supposed to do with that? I don't know what to do with that. I don't know how to feel about that. So what do I do now? There's so many questions. It was a concept and an idea that was so huge and so vast that it was almost overwhelming. But then I learned about the 12 powers, and what the 12 powers did was kind of help I don't want to say simplify, but it really helped me understand in a much more concrete way how I could use that truth, that all that God is, I am, and all that I am is God. God is in me, I am in God, we are one and the same. There is no separation. There is the allness. So the 12 powers helps me with that, because what the 12 powers helps me to realize is that depending on where I am in my life, what situation is happening, what's going on, what I need to experience, I can call on maybe a specific aspect of my divinity to help lead me towards that situation. These 12 powers are divine ideas, they're spiritual ideas, which means they're a spiritual law, which means they're always at work. They are what, for lack of a better word, they're agnostic. And agnostic in the true sense of the word is that they have no attachment to how they're being used. It's a principle, right? It's like gravity. Gravity just works. Gravity don't care how it's used. It just works. And boy, are we grateful it's working, so we don't go spinning off into the deep space. But the point is, we feel the effects of gravity, and just like that principle, these spiritual principles at law, we feel the effects of them. Not only do we feel the effects of them, but we can actually use them. We can use them consciously, or we can be very unconscious about the way that they're used, but we can't not use them. That's the thing about principle and law. We can't not use it. It is always at work. Now, here's why this really matters, because what we know as spiritual and truth students is that we live life from the inside out. What that means is that our inner state of being is what determines our outer experience. You may have heard of the law of mind action, but what sometimes people interpret that as is that, is kind of like we're casting a magic spell, and we're going to think and hold a thought in our mind, and we can affirm it, and all of a sudden we're going to see what we want picture on the outside in our lives. That's really not how that works. That's not how that happens. That's not how my understanding of how that happens. My understanding of what this means is simply that when we make choices from whatever state and stage of consciousness we are at, it leads us to our desired outcome, because we're always at choice point. Every moment, every single moment in the present is a choice point. What do we think next? What do we say next? Where do we go? What do we do? Who do we talk to? Who do we not talk to? Everything is at choice point. And the question is, where are we making those choices from? That's a fundamental question we don't spend a lot of time thinking about. What we tend to do is fast forward to the end and ask ourselves, what do we want? What do we want to happen? What do we want to experience? I invite people to reverse engineer this, because our wants spring from our needs. Let me say that again. Our wants spring from our needs. And what do we need? Okay, I'm going to get to that in a second. But before, let me revisit the thing I just said. Where are we making our choices from? The state and stage of consciousness. What do I mean by this? So your state of consciousness is either you're coming from a place of love or fear. You're coming from lack or abundance. Where are you in any given moment when you're at choice point? What state of consciousness are you in? And then we have stages of consciousness. And you may be familiar with these, but just in case, a quick recap, there are 4 stages of consciousness. We have the victim stage, where we think things are happening to me, life is happening to me, I have no control. And then we have the victor stage of consciousness, which we realize, oh, wait, I have some power here. I can impact what's happening. So now we say life is happening by me. And then we might get a little more expansive and evolve in our consciousness. And we say, now things are happening through me. Spirit is working through me. God is working through me. And now we're in vessel consciousness. But the true state or stage of expanded consciousness is when we get to verity consciousness, where we realize life isn't happening to me or by me or through me, but it is me. Because, as I said, God, all that is, spirit, whatever you want to call it, is fully present at every point in the universe, including me. I am it. I am the divine spiritual ideas. I am the spiritual law at work. It's not working through me. It is me in potential and in consciousness. we also have this wonderful, delightful human experience, right? That many of us sometimes are not too big fans of. I don't know about you, but I love being me. So I don't look down on my humanity at all. Instead, I ask myself, how can I be the best human being that I can be? And how can I be the best outpicturing of my divinity that I can be? And that's determined when I make choices and where I'm making the choices from, what stage of consciousness that I am making my choices from. Because guess what? My choices are going to lead to my outcomes. My choices are going to lead to my outcomes. When you think about that for a second and you look at your life, look at your life before, look at your life now, everything that has showed up in your life has been a result of the choices that you have made. Our choices lead to our outcomes. So where are we making our choices from? So it doesn't matter what we say we want, what we're going to end up with in our life reflects the state and stage of consciousness from which we made our choices. And this is the gift of these 12 powers, because they can help us get clear about where we are in our consciousness. So let me get back to that question of what do we want? What do we want to experience in life, right? And I said our wants are built on our needs. Our needs are those core things we need to survive and thrive as human beings, right? So like any of you who ever did any work in psychology, the name Abraham Maslow is no stranger to you. And he's got this pyramid of needs, and it starts with the most basic needs to survive, like air, water, food, shelter, sex. These are the basic biological things we need to survive. And then we move up this pyramid and we get things like connection with other people, and all the way to the top, where it's transcendence, which is we need to have spiritual experiences in order to have a fullness of our expression. So we have this entire list of the elemental things we need as human beings to survive and to thrive. I won't go into all of them now. Just Google Abraham Maslow and hierarchy of needs, and you'll see the whole list. So what often happens, though, is that as we are growing as people and evolving, and we are doing our best to fulfill these needs, we often get wounded along the way. We get hurt, we get disappointed, and for many of us, those are our original wounds occurred in interactions with our parents, right? When we were the tiniest of infants and babies and toddlers, our parents were the first source of love and nourishment for us. And then at some moment we had a realization they're human too, and they couldn't meet one of those needs as we wanted it, and we were wounded in some way. We felt betrayed, we felt abandoned, and then as we got older, other wounds happened. Perhaps the first time we were made fun in school, perhaps the first time we were in a relationship and somebody left us. Like, all of those are wounds that leave a mark in us. And more often than not, our wants spring from the desire to not experience the pain of those wounds again. So for example, if we were abandoned for some reason, whether it's in a relationship, or parents left you, or friends moved away when you were younger, even when you were older, and you felt the pain and the sting and the wound of abandonment, then moving forward, every relationship now in the back of your mind is that fear of being abandoned again. So a lot of times we go into stuff with that wound and the pain of that wound fresh in our minds, even though the occurrence may have been years, decades ago, and we don't want that to happen again, right? So often our want becomes, I want a fulfilling, loving relationship so that I will never feel the wound of abandonment again, the pain of abandonment again. So we go in with a want based on the pain and wanted to avoid that pain in the future. Buddhist teacher Tara Brach says fear is the anticipation of future pain. Fear is the anticipation of future pain. So in order to avoid the anticipation of future pain, we want things and situations in our life that we think will not bring us that. But where are we making that choice from? We're still making that choice from fear and the avoidance of fear. And then we go down a cycle of worrying about things will happen again. By the way, worrying, misuse of the power of our imagination, because we're envisioning all the worst things that can happen. So often we end up making choices from that wounded part of ourselves. Our work, therefore, is to heal our wounds and be in the work of healing our wounds. And therefore, we make choices from the healed wound or from the awareness that, hey, this choice I'm about to make is coming from the fear place, from the triggered wound. So let me make another choice. A friend of mine phrases this as, are we going to choose from the wound or are we going to choose from the scar? And when she first said this, I was like, whoa, what do you mean by that? Well, what is a scar, right? The scar is what happens when if you have a cut on our arm and it's a deep cut, but that cut heals or whatever, we have a scar that reminds us of the wound that was there, but the wound is now closed up, right? So imagine that at the emotional and deepest levels, when we have those wounds within us, when we're doing the work of healing and closing them, and we do the healing work, what's left behind after the wound? A scar. So are we making choices from the scar? Are we making choices from the anticipation of fear? Are we making choices from the anticipation of love and joy and peace and abundance? Okay. So we have to be clear that there's nothing outside of us that's going to bring us the healing we need. We've got to do the healing work in order to make better choices to then experience what we say we want. And this is where the power of will comes in. Will, as you've heard previously in parts of the service, is our ability to choose, to direct, to command, to determine. Charles Fillmore says, the will moves to action all the other faculties of the mind, or powers of the mind, the 12 powers, our abilities. It is the power of will that activates all of them. So what do I mean by this? So for example, I just mentioned that often because when we live from fear, which is the anticipation of future pain, what we've just done is we've imagined the worst case scenario. We've imagined that what might happen is we get hurt again, and therefore we either don't make the choice or we make a different choice or whatever. So can we call forth our power of imagination to imagine not future pain, but future joy, future peace, future abundance? Can we utilize our power of imagination to see the desired outcomes? Yes, we can, but we have to choose to. And what power invites us to choose? It's the power of will. Okay. The power of will determines what we're passionate about. Okay. That's, we choose, we decide what we're passionate about. We choose it. And what is that power of passion that's connected to passion, enthusiasm? That's zeal. We choose what we believe. We are all here because we, on some level, believe in these unity teachings, and we've released teachings that we no longer believe in. How did we decide to choose what to believe and what not to believe in? That involved our power of will. So will is sort of like the catalyst. It's sort of the starter engine of the car, if you will, that gets all the other powers going. Like the power of judgment or discernment, right? We learn things And then we discern what we want to hold on to and when to apply what we've learned. That's judgment. That's discernment. That's another one of our powers. And it's the power of will that allows us to choose. So when we are at choice point of deciding if we're going to choose to live from our wounded places or from the healed and healing places, that's the power of will in action. And we know, but we may not be conscious, but we know when we're choosing from a wounded place. How do we know? We know when our wounds are triggered. We feel it in our bodies. There might be a tightening of the chest. There might be that feeling of a punch to the gut, a tightening of the throat, a desire to withdraw and hide, or our body tells us when a wound's been triggered, our need to quick fix and react and retaliate. When we go into fight or flight response or freeze response, that's a wounded part of us being triggered. And we may not always know right away what the wound is, but that's why it's important to stop when that happens and give yourselves some time and space. I call it space and grace. Give yourselves the space and the grace to do some deeper investigative work and ask some deeper questions around what might this wound in me, this being triggered. And then realize that to acknowledge that that's what's being triggered, and rather than make a choice from that wounded place, make a choice from, even if the wound isn't healed, what might a healed wound look like? And to make a choice from that place. But the important thing to take away from this is that in order to get from those wants on the outside of us that we think are going to make us feel whole, to realize that we are already whole, that is our true essence. And in spite of the wounds that lie within us, back of those is the wholeness that we are. And to choose to make our choices from that place. And from that, we call forth our power of will. So I leave you with this assignment for next week. You didn't know there was going to be homework, did you? There's homework. I leave you with this assignment for next week. Ask yourself, what do you want in life? What do you want? Why have you wanted it? What deep need? So I said there was going to be a question. I guess there's multiple questions. These are all breakdowns of the same question. What do you want? Why have you wanted it? What need do you think getting what you say you want will provide? For example, many of us say, I will finally feel safe if I have enough money in the bank. I will finally feel loved if I have that life partner that I'm dreaming about. So ask yourself, what do you want? And why do you want it? Then ask yourself, from where am I making this desire to want the thing? From the wounded part of me or from the healed whole part of me? Make a list. And remember, there's not a list to beat upon yourself. This is a list just to help you see where you are right now. Because then we can call on our power of will to bring the other powers into action, to choose from the wholeness that we are and to live that wholeness. And then everything outside of us will fall into place effortlessly. And I'll talk more about that process next week. But for now, take this with you. Ask yourself, am I living from my wound or from my scar? Let's take a deep breath. And if you're comfortable, I invite you to gently close the eyes. Get yourself comfortable as we take some time to go into meditation. And I'd like to invite you to connect with your breath. Just simply notice the inflow and the outflow of breath. Notice the moments of stillness between the breath. And as you breathe and as you exhale, allow the body to find even more comfort and more stillness. Perhaps let the shoulder fall, the face soften. And we allow the breath to anchor us into this now moment. If you become distracted by a thought or a sound or a sensation in the body, just notice them without judgment, without wishing it hadn't happened. Just notice it and return your attention to the breath. And I'd like to invite you to add one more element to your breath work, which is to make your exhales a little bit longer than your inhales. So imagine you were inhaling on a count of 4 and exhaling on a count of 6. Allow the exhales to be longer than the inhales, and let's just sit in the breath. Attention on the breath for a few moments. And as we breathe, let us center ourselves in the truth that regardless of our human experience, regardless of our human needs, regardless of our human wants, the truth of us is wholeness. The truth of us is all that God is. And in this moment, we allow ourselves to be open to the unfolding of that truth, first in consciousness, in thought, in word, in choices. We call forth that divine idea, that divine power of will, which allows us to choose from our wholeness. We make loving choices because we are the fullness of love. We make peaceful choices because we are the fullness of peace. We make choices of abundant living because we are the fullness of abundance. All that God is, we are. All that God is, I am. All that God is, I am. Let us hold that thought in mind for a few moments in silence. All that God is, I am. And I allow myself to see the outpicturing of it in every moment. And so it is, and so we let it be. And thank you for this opportunity to share with you. And I look forward to connecting with you again next week. Namaste.